Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today I've got yet another movie review for you, and this time it is of the film Love and Monsters. I want to shout out Paramount for sending me this 4K Blu-ray to review for the channel, so shout out to Paramount for that, and I will also have a review of the film in this video as well. So first off, this is going to be available as of January 5th if you want to buy this film, and I would say that this is a movie I honestly think is actually worth buying because this film is a crap ton of fun. So let's go ahead and dive into the review portion of this video. As you can see, we got the Wikipedia page up, and it says that Love and Monsters is a 2020 American monster adventure film directed by Michael Matthews with Sean Levy and Dan Cohen serving as producers. The film stars Dylan O'Brien. For those that don't know, Dylan O'Brien is of Maze Runner fame. I have huge respect for the guy, especially since he got injured for doing a lot of his own stunts on the Maze Runner sets. Jessica Henwick, who I believe was she was the female actress, one of the female actresses in the movie, in the TV series The 100, and I thought she did a great job in this as well. Dan Ewing, Michael Rooker, that's right, Michael Rooker in this film, and Ariana Greenblatt, I think was the younger child that was with Michael Rooker's character, follows a young man in a post-apocalyptic world who must make the journey to reunite with his girlfriend. Development of this began back in 2012 of all things. O'Brien and Matthews joined the film in 2018. The rest of the cast joined over the next few months, and a lot of the filming took place in Australia in May of 2019, and the sets and the locations they used were actually pretty amazing. The film was originally going to be a wide theatrical release by Paramount Pictures in February 2021. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the studio opted to release the film digitally via video on demand and in select theaters on October 16th. It received generally positive reviews from critics. So, this movie deals with the character played by Dylan O'Brien, who lives in a world where there was a post-apocalyptic thing that happened, or rather this apocalyptic thing that happened, where essentially they had a massive item that was going towards the Earth, and so what did the Earth do? They sent a bunch of nukes into the Earth and destroyed it, and everyone cheered, and then all of a sudden radiation fell down, and what happened? Oh, the humans were fine, but all of the, basically all of this insect life started to be mutated, and so they grew into these giant monsters, and they also developed various, sharp teeth and everything like that. So a lot of mutations in that way with a lot of the animal life on Earth, which then, of course, led to much of the world's population being completely wiped out. And that's where we pick up with this story, because Dylan O'Brien's character has been with his colony for a long time. He is pretty much someone that doesn't really do a whole lot. He does the cooking for them. That's pretty much it. He gets frozen every time that he ever has tried out to go out into the field and actually fight some of the monsters, because you find out later on, and obviously there will be some spoilers in this review, as there always is, because I don't feel like I can talk about a film as much without talking about potential spoilers. But I think this is a film that even if you know some of the things that happen in this movie, you can still genuinely enjoy it. You find out later in the film the reason why he freezes when it comes to these monsters is because he actually had to watch his parents die in front of him. So basically, he was in the car. They got into an accident because there was this giant monster that was stomping on all these cars. And what ended up happening was they got stuck, and their car doors they could not get out of. And so therefore, his back seat was available for him to get out, and they were stuck. They couldn't move. They were kind of wedged into their car seats in this way. They said, please get out, get out, get out. And then literally what happens is the giant monster that's attacking stomps on the car right in front of him, and he watches his parents get completely destroyed. And so because of that, he has always had this freeze up problem, where anytime something crazy is about to happen, anytime he's afraid, he freezes, and he therefore puts himself and those around him in danger, which is why he's basically just been left to cooking dinners and all that kind of stuff. But he had a girlfriend before the apocalypse. He actually found her on a radio at some point in the last several months, and he has decided now that because he wants to be with her, that he is going to leave his colony on his own and go and find her, since she is only about 80 miles away. And so then that is what most of the film is him traveling on the surface for about 7 days, fighting monsters, finding some people on the way, including Michael Rooker and Ariana Greenblatt, who are some survivors that are trying to find their way to the mountains, where they hear there's a colony up there where it's much safer, there's less monsters there in the process. And what he finds out is that he actually has a lot of willpower. He actually has a lot of heart. In fact, he meets this cute little adorable dog along the way, which is one of my favorite parts of the movie, is all the interactions that he has with this dog, who had a master and lost the master. And so he's very upset. The dog is very sad because he does not have his master anymore, who had apparently had died. He does have a red dress though that she used to wear, and so it's some of those cute things where he holds on to the dress, and very compelling stuff. Anyway, That all being said, I actually thoroughly enjoyed this movie for the most part. It's one of those films where it's not, this A-level film, like groundbreaking stuff. I will say, though, that as far as anything groundbreaking that I could say happens in this movie, it would have to be the visual effects. This film cost around $30 million to make, which is really not a lot of money when you think about modern-day Hollywood, and yet this film had better visual effects with their CGI monsters than I've seen in some of the biggest budget films that have come out over the last several years. And so to me, this is a film that's worth seeing for that alone, to see that, hey, you don't need a lot of money to get not only good visual effects, but also the good use of visual effects. Because here's the thing, when it comes to CGI, there's two different categories. There is the CGI itself. Does the CGI itself look good, or is it impressive? And even in things like The Mandalorian, for instance, I would say that the CGI, for the most part, is pretty impressive. It's amazing what they can do nowadays, which was something that we really couldn't do before. Obviously, this comes into that Luke Skywalker discussion about whether or not that was good CGI or not. So if we're talking just about the actual effect itself and the technology behind it and just the impressiveness of it, then yes, there's obviously some cool things there. But then there's the use of CGI, right? How it's used, how it's implemented. Does it work with the scenes around it? Does it blend in with the environment around it? Or does it just look artificial and does it just not look good? The great thing about this movie is because they are on location in Australia, they're able to use a lot of real-world sets. They're able to use a lot of real-world locations and then also implement CGI elements into it. And they're able to blend it in so well that, yeah, obviously you can still tell it's CGI, but it does look really, really good, and it's one of those things where you think to yourself, man, if this is what they can do with $30 million, imagine what they could do with even bigger budget. However, I'm happy that they didn't, because typically, when you have less money, it means you spend it more wisely, which means you actually put in more effort into the story, and into making sure that you only use the visual effects when you need to, and that you do it well enough. Because I want to say there were actually a couple of scenes where they use some practical effects in here too, maybe some robotics or some puppetry, and it does look really, really good, and it really does blend in seamlessly with it all. Obviously, this film is led by Dylan O'Brien of Maze Runner fame, so obviously he's a pretty good leading guy. I mean, he's not a Tom Cruise or anything like that. There is a fun joke, though, to be made saying, I feel like Tom Cruise. And I thought that was just, again, very entertaining in that capacity, because he is doing a lot of his own stunts, and I feel like that was kind of a play on the fact that Dylan O'Brien does a lot of his own stunts and has actually gotten injured. There was a long delay to one of the Maze Runner films because he had a pretty bad injury for doing his own stunts in that way. So it was really cool to see him back on the screen doing that. He does play this more of a timid character, very different than the role he played in Maze Runner, and I don't know if I quite bought into it nearly as much. I don't know if I liked his performance in that capacity or whether he fit that role as much, but I didn't have a big enough problem with it where it detracted from the movie at all. I was still able to enjoy it, and there's just a lot of fun in here. Now, the movie is not necessarily original from the way it's constructed. I think that the designs of the monsters are really freaking cool, so kudos to them, and kudos to the design team that actually got that stuff out there. But I definitely do think that this is definitely derivative of other stories. For instance, a lot of this movie is very much derivative of Zombieland. So you have one guy going off on his own who is timid, right, who is shy. Difference, of course, being that in Zombieland, the guy is pretty smart. He knows exactly what he's doing. But in this instance, as he's going on his journey and as he's going through life, he has this monster book. So literally he's writing down volume 1, volume 2 of how to identify and stop monsters and the weaknesses of them. And it reminded me a lot of the book that was written by the character in Zombieland in that same capacity. You also have the point where he meets people on the journey, some badass people, including a badass guy and a badass girl as well. And that reminded me very much of when in Zombieland he meets up with and interacts with other badass characters along the way as well. So it's not exactly the same. There are some differences in the characterizations and the motivations and how long they spend with each other, but there is definitely some derivatives to be seen and to be found, especially when you compare it to that specific film. So I did notice that, obviously both dealing with post-apocalyptic worlds, and I thought that that was something that was worth noting. But overall, I would say that everything looks pretty great. The cinematography by Lachlan Milne, I think, was pretty damn good. The score, again, nothing too great, but again, I thought that it was serviceable for what the film actually was itself. The story is, to me, I think the best way to describe this film, other than it being derivative a little bit of Zombieland, is that this would be a good, I think, one of those B-level films, right? So it's not the film that's like the main attraction that you go to see, but it's one of those films that you see before the big movie, right? So back in the day, you would have like those B movies that would show before the main feature, and they would sometimes be pretty good, sometimes they wouldn't be so good, but they were enjoyable. This is an enjoyable film, right? It's a very it's a fun adventure film. I think that if you were to watch this film, most of you would be entertained by it. And I would say, once again, that the most impressive part of all of this is the visual effects and the fact that they were able to do so much with $30 million in the process. It's also not that long of a film. It's only about an hour and 40 minutes, hour 45 minutes or so. It is something that I think is worth the time overall. The transfer is very, very good. So I was able to watch this one. I was able to watch the Blu-ray edition of this specific film, and it looked fantastic. But this does indeed, the 4K edition does come with the 4K resolution, full HD, HDR. And then you have disc 2, which has both a Blu-ray feature film. So if you don't have 4K yet, but maybe you want to upgrade over time, if you buy this, you can get both. And it says that you also get deleted scenes, bottom of the food chain, the cast of Love and Monsters, and it's a monsters world creating a post-apocalyptic landscape. And again, it goes into the way that they created it, the way they use the natural environments of Australia, and were able to kind of play off on it, but also, too, the way they were able to do these visual effects, which, again, I cannot stress enough, look pretty damn good. There's this fight scene at the very end where there's this mutated crab, and it looks fantastic. It really does. And I don't say that often. You all know I'm a stickler when it comes to CGI, but I really do think the CGI in this film is definitely worth noting. And as you can see, it is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which really shouldn't mean a whole lot. But when it comes to this movie, I would say that this is a solid B for me, to be perfectly honest. This is a film that I would totally watch again. I think it's a lot of fun overall. It's really fun to have this world. I don't really want them to make more movies in this universe, only because I could see them getting more money if it is successful on VOD and all that stuff. And, oh, let's, develop it more, put more monsters in, and then the natural degrading of those effects because they're trying to do more would naturally happen. I think that this is a great standalone film that really can stand by itself, stand kind of that test of time, and overall be a very enjoyable film in the process. So I'd give this film a solid B. Again, this will be available on January 5th to buy on Blu-ray and on 4K. And once again, shout out to that visual effects team because, dear Lord, the effects look absolutely fantastic. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this movie? Have you seen it yet? Again, it is available right now on digital. It is on digital for purchase. It's also, I believe, still on video on demand, or you can wait until January 5th to get it on Blu-ray or 4K. I personally think it would be worth getting on Blu-ray or 4K, depending on, of course, your budget. Is it a film that you have to spend $40 on for the Steelbook, collector's edition? I don't think there's going to be a Steelbook collector's edition, but if there were, not necessarily, but it is a film that I do think is one that if you were to buy it, you would enjoy it, you would have fun with it, and you would probably want to go see it more than once, to be perfectly honest, because, as I said, the visual effects are quite stunning, and I want to dive myself back into this world, even though it's derivative of other things, because it was, for the most part, a pretty enjoyable experience, and to see the journey, and the hero's journey specifically, that the character played by Dylan O'Brien goes on is pretty great, and also to see an actor that does a lot of his own stunts is also something that is always great to see as well. So anyway, what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, smash the Rumble button. If you're watching over on Rumble, you are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my December Patreon and Subscribe Star members, starting off with Patreon, Albertus Magnus, Andrew Hoyle, Animation Commentator, Brian P., Dion, Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, The Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jay, Jeffrey Toon, Jonathan Carney, Kenneth Camille, Laura Story, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mike Jackson, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Outpost Dyer, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Miss Martin Muses, also known as Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bogend, Tina B, and the Modern Major General, Laura Story. Gotta give you that shout out for that one time that you were doubled up. Thank you very much for being my Patreon members. And now a huge shout out to all of my December Subscribe Star members we have over there with Stand For, Perpetual Punster, Robert Revo, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, Darkstar 57, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888209 Fast, Dean Heiss, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nevadon G. Adams, and ZK Man. Thank you all so much for being my Patreon and Subscribestar members. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every video and live stream on the main channel, please consider joining over on those platforms. You can also get access to things like exclusive giveaways of 4Ks, Blu-rays. If you want a DVD, I guess you could also get a DVD as well, digital codes, and of course, you get to possibly join me on the channel once a month for the Chosen of Valhalla live stream and access to an exclusive podcast featuring John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where we have a lot of fun talking about movies and tons of other random things. Anyway, if you want to support these things, check out the links in the description of this video, and also please consider joining my other channel, the OMB Report, where I talk about not just movies like I do over here, but I focus more so on politics, news, and culture in that order. You guys are all amazing. Thank you for your love and support. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.